Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath for Forbes Breaking News. This week, much of the U.S. is expected to be in a massive heat wave. Here to explain how many people will be affected and just how hot it will get is Accuweather's long-range meteorologist Alex DeSilva. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's start basic. How hot is it supposed to get this week, and where? Which states are going to be experiencing this heat?
Well, areas from the Central Plains, Midwest, and into the Northeast are going to be under the grips of a heat wave this whole entire week, it looks like. Temperatures could soar into the 90s and could even soar into the triple digits in some areas. 135 or more Americans are under the gun potentially this week for extreme and dangerous heat.
135 million Americans. That's about a third, if not more, of the country. And you said right now, 90 degrees to even in the triple digits. That is going to be the actual temperature.
Correct.
What is the real feel? What will it feel like to people in those states?
Well, yeah, in a lot of these areas, the humidity levels are going to be very high. So that means the dew point temperatures are going to be in the 60s, 70s. And that just makes it feel really, really hot outside. That's like when you're going outside and you step outside and you start sweating immediately. Those are the kind of temperatures I think we're going to be dealing with here over the next week and into the weekend in a lot of these locations. So yeah, AccuWeather real field temperatures in a lot of these areas, 105, 110, maybe even 115 in some areas.
That's too hot for June. And in fact, we are speaking before it is even officially summer. The first day of summer is Thursday, June 20th. So Alex, I want to ask, how rare is it for a heat wave like this to take effect before the calendar has officially turned to summer?
Well, we've seen heat waves happen, in June before, but I think what makes this one so different is just the scope of it, how widespread this heat wave is, extending from portions of the Midwest, even extending into the plains, and then all the way to the East Coast and into New England. So I think it's more of the scope. This is something we don't see all the time. We've seen, like I said, heat waves in June, but, they're much more on a smaller scale, not as many Americans affected, or they're confined to one small area of the country. What makes this one different is just how vast this is across a majority, or you said about a third of the U.S. population being affected by this heat wave.
What is causing such a vast majority of the country to be affected by this one heat wave? Do we
I mean,
know?
I think it's just the placement of it. It is just smack dab in a lot of the population centers. You have major cities being affected, Chicago, New York City, Baltimore, DC. You have the I-95 corridor, of course, but then it also extends into some of those major cities in the Midwest. You have Detroit, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Chicago. So a lot of these major cities are being affected, and that's where a majority of the population lives. And so that's why, well over 100 million affected by this heat wave.
Huge population centers to be sure, but I guess what I'm also wondering is if you look at the airflow and if you look at the weather system, is there something about climate change that is driving such a massive weather system to raise the temperatures as high as they will be this week?
Well, it's hard to exactly tie, one single event to climate change, of course, but what we have been seeing is we've seen the temperatures of the oceans warming pretty consistently over the last, 10, 15 years. And I think that is playing a role, when there's more heat in the oceans, some more of that heat can kind of get transferred into the atmosphere essentially and can help to build these areas of high pressure. So I think that could be a contributing factor, and we might end up seeing some more of these heat waves as we move into the future.
Now, there were wildfires outside of LA, a tropical storm system in Mexico. Are all of these things connected? Can we blame one weather event for all of these headlines, or is it disparate weather events that have caused the wildfires and the tropical storm and now the impending heat wave in the Northeast?
I think they're slightly different. Each one is kind of independent of one another, but sometimes you can get one thing to affect another. For example, you have the big heat dome in the east, and that is actually what's going to be driving the potential tropical system down in the Bay of Campeche that's developing right now. We could see a tropical depression or tropical storm very, very soon. And that is going to be driven on the bottom end of that area of high pressure. Sometimes early in the season, especially, tropical systems kind of like to belly underneath these areas of high pressure and ride around the periphery of them. And so that's what we're going to be seeing. If that system develops in the Bay of Campeche, it's going to be kind of guided to the west by that area of high pressure. I will say this, that area of high pressure could be a saving grace for us in terms of the tropics overall, because that system is going to be driven to the west into Mexico fairly quickly here, I think over the next couple of days. Now, if that high wasn't there, the system could have potentially gotten drawn north through the Gulf of Mexico, had much more time to potentially strengthen, and then impacted the United States. So it could potentially be a saving grace that, that system only will have a very short time over those warm waters.
So high pressure here is good news for those of us in the Northeast. What will ultimately cause these high temperatures to dissipate? What are we anticipating at the end of this heat wave?
Yeah, I think at the next weekend, we will probably see a cold front sweep through the Northeast, bringing showers and thunderstorms, and that could, at least for temporarily subdue the heat wave. I think the majority of this week, we're going to be pretty locked into very hot, very humid, dangerous heat across a majority of, that region from the Midwest to the Northeast. But like I said, we're watching this next coming weekend. Might get a cold front to come through either Saturday or Sunday. We'll have to exactly, watch the timing of that. Of course, we're still a little far out, but that could bring us some temporary relief. And next week might be a little bit cooler than what we're dealing with this week.
I know you said temporary relief. So what are we expecting in terms of the number of heat waves this summer? Is this the first of 2, 5, 10? Do we know?
Yeah, it's hard to, again, put a number on exactly how many we're going to see. Now, AccuWeather put out their summer forecast many months ago, and we've been forecasting a hot summer for a good portion of the Midwest to Northeast. So this isn't really out of what we were saying was going to happen. If maybe the longevity of it is a little bit longer. However, I think we probably get a little bit of a break next week. And then as we enter the month of July, I think the heat might come back. And so it wouldn't surprise me if at the very end of June and into July, maybe for the 4th of July holiday weekend, we might be dealing with another heat wave somewhere, either in the Midwest or Northeast.
Now, you are also AccuWeather's hurricane analyst, lead hurricane analyst. So I want to ask you, Alex, what does this heat mean for hurricane season, if anything?
It really doesn't mean a whole lot, I don't think. It can, of course, increase the water temperature. So that's what we're going to be watching for, especially further north. That could end up playing a big role later on in the season if we can kind of warm those temperatures further north up much higher than average. That could potentially allow a tropical system to survive further north in the Atlantic Ocean than it otherwise would. So that could have implications for places like the Carolinas and maybe even up into New England later in the season if we can get those water temperatures warmer. But other than that, it really, I don't think, plays a significant role.
Now, you talked about the persistent heat, the length of this heat wave, and the humidity. So people are really going to be feeling it. What is your advice, if any, for folks who are looking for ways to keep their homes cool, their bodies cool, and generally stay away from the heat in the coming days?
Yeah, if you have to do any kind of work outside, whether it be any kind of projects, sporting events, anything like that, if you can try to limit them to the morning hours or the late afternoon hours, that would be best. The middle of the day from about noontime to about 3 or 4 p.m. is typically the hottest point of the day. And that's the most dangerous time to be outside because you can get dehydrated very quickly. That's when the humidity is going to be really high. It's going to feel really, really nasty outside. If you can avoid those times a day outside, stay inside, do something else, stay in the AC. However, if you do have to be outside during those peak heating hours of the day, just make sure you drink plenty of fluids, plenty of water, stay hydrated. That's the biggest thing. We don't want anyone having heat stroke, heat exhaustion. Listen to your body. If you're starting to get a headache, if you're starting to cramp up, just listen to your body. Your body's telling you something. Take its advice, take a break, and hydrate.
Alex, is there anything else we need to know about the heat wave that is coming to affect so many millions of Americans this week?
Yeah, again, just be safe out there. This is summer, it's supposed to get hot, maybe not for this, long stretch of days. But again, check on your elderly neighbors, check on your family members, make sure everyone's okay. Make sure, You know, everyone's taking care of themselves. If you want to go to the beach, go to the beach, go to the pool, you know, just take breaks. You know, go out, enjoy the weather, but be safe while doing so, and make sure you stay hydrated.
Alex DeSilva for Accuweather, thank you so much for joining us and explaining what we can expect this week. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.